When you're starting out and you're a beginner entrepreneur, like, you know nothing. Like, you're literally just learning how to walk, actually not even how to walk, just how to like say your first word in the entrepreneurial language, right? Welcome back to a brand new episode of The Art of E-Commerce. We've got our co-host Tony, and my name is Jaime, if you guys are new to this podcast. Now, today we're talking about the harsh truths of being an internet entrepreneur. So we're exposing some secrets. We're talking about stuff that people don't really talk about, not just the flashy stuff, but the actual truths and maybe the uncomfortable stuff, right? The true, the realities. Obviously, we'll talk about a bit about wins and leveling up and scaling things up. But yeah, I'm excited for this, man.
Me too, dude. And in the end of the day, the truth is, to a lot of people, this concept of being able to make money online from your own house, from your own laptop, is almost like incomprehensible, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they don't really understand the fact that it is now a world where that is something you can do. And it is something that you can do without actually scamming people, right? Where you're actually providing actual value and, changing lives and facilitating and enabling things for other people.
100%. And I feel, I guess people are starting to catch up, especially because of the current social landscape and what we've gone through, where everything has shifted online and people have started to take notice, and it doesn't feel like this bubble or like this, big scam. There's definitely a shift in society now, and it's really good to see people realizing that e-commerce is here to stay. It's only getting bigger and bigger, and the people that take advantage of this incredible opportunity, whether it's starting an e-com agency and servicing all these brands that are popping up, or wanting to take things up to a whole new level, they're really going to thrive. Like, it's creating a whole new era. Every time there's a transition, or every time there's a shift in society, there are going to be people that benefit massively. There's also going to be big losers, right? And so it comes down to like, what side are you going to be on, and what, in terms of the financial things, right, side of things, but what side are you going to be on, and what are you going to decide to do, right? Are you going to get better, or are you going to get better and really take advantage of it?
Absolutely. And I mean, the big thing that I see with internet entrepreneurship and really being able to make a living online is that it's given people the opportunity to step out of situations and the life path, let's say, that they wouldn't have been able to do maybe 10, 20 years ago, right? And now with the democratization of information as well, and the fact that this is widely open for people to see, you log in on Instagram, on TikTok, on Facebook, it's there in your face. You see people thriving, you see people managing to make themselves up from the ground, really, and you really don't need anything to get started, right?
Yeah.
How do you think people are reacting to that generally? Do you see it as like something that everyone views positively? Do you see some backlash? What have been your experiences so far with like perceptions?
I think it's hugely positive. I do feel like a lot of the times is there's obviously different generations, right? So for example, with my e-com agency, we run big accounts, right? And we work with some big businesses, and a lot of the times the people that run these businesses aren't as young as we are, maybe 50 plus or 60. We have this, for example, this client who they made a lot of money with direct marketing, right? Meaning like they would just put an ad on a magazine, right? And they would just crush it. Or they would like have infomercials and just crushed it, right, with products. And now making that transition, it almost seems crazy to them that they have this, for example, instant feedback, right? They run a Facebook ad and boom, sales, right? And we can scale much faster, right? We can test different products way faster. It almost seems like too good to be true, right? We also have, for example, another client who's like massive on retail, right? Like they're making 20 plus, I think at this point like 30 plus million per year. Rev on the retail side of things, but on their e-commerce, like they before us, they almost hadn't touched it, right? And so like these are big changes in society, and I feel like people are obviously coming to terms. I feel like e-commerce isn't as new as it used to be, 5, 8, 10 years ago. but it's really good to see that people are coming to terms. I just feel like some people are vulnerable because a lot of them see this opportunity, and there's obviously some people that don't have their best interest in people getting into space in mind, and so people have to be careful and think, not let their emotions override them, and think clearly, really.
For sure, man. And I think in the end of the day, right, like these concepts that we're talking about, e-commerce, social media, these things really are changing the fabric of society and the way that we live our lives, right? And it's not for me to say if it's for the better or for the worse, but it's just the way things are heading, right? And again, it's a adapt or die, and of course it'll create winners, and of course like these kinds of changes, as you said, create losers, right? But how would you say someone can really like adapt to this changing landscape, right? Like how do you make it so that you can be a winner within this and you can go on and do your own thing in internet business and not just watch from the sidelines and see all these people crush it while you fantasize about these things?
I think the first thing is understanding that the current educational system and the current way that society is set up hasn't caught up to this massive opportunity. So understand that no shit, like there aren't universities, like there's you won't learn building an e-com agency, right, or build an e-commerce business by going to university. Like you won't pick up the skills by going down the traditional path. So understand that, right? And so if you are looking to have success in this space, you're probably gonna have to go down an unconventional path, right? And so that's why you see a lot of like people that are crushing it in the e-com space, whether they have this really successful e-com agency or they have this really successful e-com brand. Like they almost seem like this whiz kids because they dropped out and all that stuff. It's just simply the nature of the landscape, right? It's just simply because the conventional path hasn't caught up, right? Now I'm not saying if it did catch up, I'm not saying universities will still have value. Like I just don't believe in that model anyways, right? Regardless of whether they have an e-commerce, course or they don't, right? But I understand that if you are looking to get success in the space, you're gonna have to look at people online who are crushing it and either take mentorship or whatever is needed to download this information, because this information is also very recent, right? It's an ever-changing space as well. So it's all about understanding that the conventional path is not going to serve you, okay? Then kind of, looking at the people who are crushing it, right? Doing your due diligence, right? And doing your own vetting and following a clear roadmap, right? Then asserting your own creativity in it and executing, right? Executing a ton. And that's what this space is all about. At first, it can be very overwhelming because there's so many different concepts that you don't know. Like, I'm sure you didn't know what a funnel was, like, a year and a half ago almost, right? So there's so many concepts that you don't know. Just understand that if you start thinking about all the stuff you don't know, then you're going to get overwhelmed. So just take it step by step. Learn about, for example, start learning about, ad copy, right? Then learn about ad creatives and learn about, a bit about Facebook ads and Google ads, and maybe start selling your services first, right, to e-com businesses. And then once you've garnered a lot of, capital from doing these services, once you've garnered a lot of experience from servicing these brands, once you have a lot of connections with other founders, maybe consider starting your own brands. And it's kind of like that, right? A lot of people look at this, look at the mountain and they get overwhelmed. Just look at your boots, right? And take it step by step, but understand that the road you're going to have to travel is not the traditional road.
I think you made a very powerful point there as well in terms of the higher education not being set up, right? Because there are courses out there on like digital marketing strategies and, online learning and these different types of things. But in the end of the day, these courses that are taught by universities, they have to be approved by people at the top, right? A, these people aren't the know-it-all grandmasters of the internet. And B, they get approved like a year or two in advance. And by the time these courses are then taught, as you said, with the ever-changing nature of this stuff, with the fact that, what you see now in a year's time will probably be completely different across all these platforms and what's working, what's not working. By the time you graduate a 3-year degree, what you learn at the start is already like, might as well be history, right? So again, it's about charting your own path and knowing where to look and who to listen to be able to take the steps, right?
That, and also the fact that it's just purely theory, and I mean that's we could talk about the problems with university, because we've both gone, right? I mean, I dropped out after first year. You just finished your master's, so like it's not like, well, you're still in the process, but it's not like we haven't actually been inside the infrastructure that we're talking about, right? So I mean, we could talk about like the whole problem with university, but the main thing is they stay on the surface level. Like there's no talk about how to actually use this to monetize yourself, right? Mm-hmm. No, because that's not what they're interested in. They're interested in you getting maybe a digital marketing job in a big agency and doing something like that, right? It's a shame, because I've met a bunch of people who have told me, we struck up a conversation. I told them like, yeah, I do a few things here and there with when it comes to digital marketing, and they're like, oh, I took a digital marketing course in university and it was fucking shit. It's kind of like it's a shame, because digital marketing is just, I may be biased, but it's just so cool, right? It's about understanding people, about changing people's lives, about reaching people, right? About you can get a ton of eyeballs, right, on a product or a service that can change people's lives, and you can have such massive scale, and you can have such quick feedback as well, right? It really is a shame, but that's kind of like that's why the importance of traveling that narrow road.
Absolutely, man. And I mean, to not shift, but move on a little bit from what we're saying, and based a bit on what you were saying before, service versus product, right? Because I remember, like, I don't know, probably just over a year and a half at this point ago, I had a conversation with you, and I was like, I see myself selling things, and I see myself selling products, especially at some point in the future.
Right.
What was the advice that you give and that you told me to go towards the service route to start out?
I mean, the thing about starting with, and funny enough, like when I was 16, I started my ecom brand, right? And it wasn't a dropshipping brand or anything like that. It was like, we literally had a manufacturer, and we'd print these designs with the manufacturer, and we'd have like this tight connection with them, and so it was this very like artisanal like process, like a very homemade process. But it didn't quite crack the ice for me and my partner, simply because when you're starting out and you're a beginner entrepreneur, like nothing, like you're literally just learning how to walk, actually not even how to walk, just how to like say your first word in the entrepreneurial language, right? And so what you don't want to do is go into a business model that requires a bunch of expertise in a bunch of different areas, right? So if you dissect an e-commerce brand, you've got, I mean, I could talk about this for ages, but you got the logistics side of things, right? So how are you going to get this product shipped to the customer fast, right? You've got the before that, right, the product creation side of things, and the brainstorming of like the actual product, like you're building something, right? Mm-hmm. And that process is always going to be slower, right? So the building something, that prototype of the product, and the brainstorming of this product, and making sure that the quality is great, right, before you ship it to a customer. Then the logistics side of things, the product development, right? So how to make it constantly better. Then find a manufacturer, and marketing and branding, and building a website and learning how to do marketing. Like there's so many different aspects of the business to be successful, right? And so what you don't want to do when you're a beginner entrepreneur is have to master a bunch of different components. One, because you don't know much, right? And so the amount of learning that you have to do is just close to impossible. And two, if you even did all that learning, you don't have the capital to invest into team members that would help you manage all these aspects of the business, right, that are complex. So that's why I'm so bullish on the service-based business model, because when I switched to instead of building my own ecom brand when I was 16, let me actually help other ecom brand owners with one specific area of their growth, right, and their success, which is the marketing side of things. And be more specific, let me help with paid ads, right? And so when I decided to focus on one single thing, number one, much less complexity, way more simple to master the service and become an expert and become a well-paid expert at this, right? 3, you don't have to invest much, right? When you're selling a service, you're selling expertise, what's up in here, right? In your brain. Maybe you could have a team member that helps you with a certain aspect, like the service delivery, but at the end of the day, like, you're not having to invest thousands into creating products and into this long laborious process. You can also, number 4, you can get started right away, right? Like, you don't have to wait for anything. Like, you don't have to wait for products to arrive or to come up with the great idea, right? It's like, no, it's a pretty simple business model. It's not rocket science, but it's so effective, especially if you go narrow and you appeal to a small group of people who share a common problem. And that is why I'm a massive fan of the service-based business model. Also, because it makes for a great transition to then build your own e-com brand. Why? Because now you're garnering all this knowledge from working with other e-com founders about logistics, about product development. Oh, here's how we do our branding, right? Here's our branding team. Oh, let me introduce you to our branding team. Cool. You can take all these connections, all this expertise, right? You can take the team that you've built for your service-based business, like, for example, an agency, right? And you can use all these assets to then create your own brands and then sell products. Make sense? So it just, that path makes so much more sense. And I'm a breathing example of that being implemented. Like, I started off with an e-com brand, then I won the service-based business route. And then now I'm at a point where we have this very successful e-com agency, but then we're also starting our own e-com brands, which is very exciting.
Absolutely, man. No, and I mean, what really attracts me personally to the agency model is the fact that you're bringing tangible results and value to people's businesses, right? Mm-hmm. But of course, the agency model isn't the only thing you can do within online entrepreneurship, right? There's different routes you can take. So I mean, specifically on one of them, what are your thoughts on dropshipping? Is dropshipping a scam?
Dude, what you just said there is literally the answer to the question, which is there are tangible results and you're adding real value to real people. That is the power of, for example, a service-based business model, right? When you have a business model that adds value to real people, you're never gonna go hungry, right? Like, it's gonna be a business model that has longevity. The platforms may change, the services may change, but it's gonna have longevity no matter what. Now, when you violate that rule of adding real value to real, to people, right? Then you have a business that doesn't have much longevity. And so dropshipping, sure, it benefited the founder, right? Especially when, Facebook ads and all these platforms didn't crack down on them, right? But it doesn't benefit the customer, right? Now, dropshipping, by the way, I want to make the distinction, is very different to what I consider e-commerce. Mm-hmm. Dropshipping is just a kind of like a subset of a way of doing e-commerce, right? And so, to my point, dropshipping is this model where customers have to wait a ton of time, right? When it comes to the product development, like, you're literally just, in most cases, I don't want to speak for all dropshippers, right? But in most cases, you're literally just like sticking your logo on a product you found on Alibaba, right? And so, and you're charging like, I don't know, a massive markup for that. There's no problem in it's just the loss of business, like, you charge markup. But when you've added tangible value to that product, right? If your customer could have just gone to Alibaba, and a lot of people are doing this because they're catching up, right? If your customer could have gone to Alibaba, right, and just bought the exact same product, what's your value, right? They're gonna have to wait the same time, right? If they're getting it from Alibaba, they just maybe don't have your logo on the product. I don't think they really care about that because you're not a well-established brand, right? So they're not really gonna brag about, like, I don't know, moonshots.co.uk, like, they're not really gonna brag about your brand name, right? And thirdly, like, customer service is pretty poor. And fourth, like, you don't know building a brand, so it doesn't have longevity. Like, oftentimes these brands, like, they pop up and they just disappear. So when you violate, like, common rules of business, you've got a business that doesn't have longevity. And I've got mentees who have done dropshipping in the past, and some of them didn't have as much success. Some did, like, made millions, but also lost millions. And it's this stress, right? Like, you're living with this stress, and it goes up, it goes down. It doesn't have any predictability, it doesn't have any longevity. And that comes down to having a business that doesn't add real value to people. I would not be able to live with that type of, like, pressure and unpredictability, really.
And even though, okay, so dropshipping is definitely a no that you wouldn't go for, right?
Now, do I think it's a scam? No. Like, I mean, a lot of people throw this word around. Like, I mean, it's not like they're not, you know, you're receiving the product, like you're getting what you're buying, right? Hopefully they're being clear about the, you know, setting clear expectations. And again, there, you know, dropshipping brands out there that maybe are doing things way better. But it's not great for the founder. Like, it's not a business model that I would recommend anyone, right? And it's also not great for the customer. And so it's, just not a great decision.
Oh, for sure. But okay, let's say you want to go into internet entrepreneurship. You find the agency space, and then you see how many people are actually involved and how many people are trying to do something, how many people are making noise, right? How would you say is the best way to approach that? Do you try to go round? Do you try to look for something else? Like, how do you approach starting out nowadays within the model that you're doing?
Yeah, that's a really good question, right? And the first thing you need to understand, and you definitely know this, right? Like, is the fact that it's this echo chamber effect, right? Where, like, you think there's a lot of people in a space and that everyone knows about, you know, the agency model and building an e-com agency, but that's because you've congregated with people that are doing the exact same thing, right? Like, you've joined certain groups that are, you know, maybe on Facebook that are around that, right? You follow certain YouTube channels, you follow certain Instagram accounts, right? And these people do too. But when you compare it to, like, the world's population, it really is a tiny percentage, and there really is a big ocean, right? That's the first thing. Now, the next thing you need to understand is, out of all those people that create this noise, right, and that are, you know, following, you know, these groups and you know, talking about it, you know, the agency model and discussing it and thinking of starting it, like, the percentage of people who actually take action is very, very low, right? So then you kind of go into, like, a smaller circle of people. Then from the people that actually take action and know what they're doing, again, very, very small group of people, right? So then you get a smaller group of people, right? And then the people that actually take action, right, know what they're doing and actually generally care and are trying to build, like, a real business and be at the top of their game, very, very few people, right? And so it comes down to, like, what type, you know, what circle are you in? Are you the type of person that's just gonna, like, sit around and, you know, hear about the agency space and not really take action? Cool, you're gonna be in a pool of people that are never gonna take action, and maybe they're gonna blame the fact that it's saturated. But when you generally commit to mastery, there's very few people that do that, right? And it's the same with everything in life. Like, the amount of people that actually commit to mastery, I'm sure you've seen this, right? Like, the amount of people that, like, are on Facebook groups, right? We've got you're the head model of our community on Facebook, right? On the client closers, and the amount of people in that group is an incredible community, right? But the amount of people that in that group that will never actually implement, because, you know, a free mastermind, we're posting a lot of great content on there, but the amount of people that will implement is only a certain percentage, right? So understanding that. Now, after understanding that is understanding that, you know, if you do reach that echelon of people that actually care and that actually want to commit to this and generally, like, have invested into themselves and know and have a clear plan of attack, once you've done that and once you've gotten crystal clear on that, then it's having this monopoly agency approach. And I've spoken about this on my YouTube as well, but the monopoly agency approach is understanding that you don't want to compete. You don't want to look at other agencies and be like, oh, I'm going to do that, I'm going to compete with them when you're starting out. No, right? You want to tap into a blue ocean, right? You want to competition is not good, right? Competition is for losers. There's a great, 0 to 1 is a great book by Peter Thiel. And he talks about this, right? The fact that competition is for losers, and the greatest companies started out with a very, very niche market and try to dominate that fast, right? And so if you try to go to the broad e-com space and compete with this e-com agencies that have been in the market for longer, sure, obviously you're going to get beaten out, right? And so that's why it's important to go niche fast, go small, and then try to dominate that market yourself. And then once you've gotten that authority, then you can broaden yourself up, because that it's just a complete different approach. And most people, unfortunately, they try to emulate the people at the top, and they don't realize that that's their chapter 21, and like you're at chapter 1, which is completely fine, because you can be much more agile than these bigger agencies, right? There are big elephants that cannot move around as quickly as you.
Absolutely. So narrowing down and really picking your niche that you want to dominate and making that monopoly agency.
Yeah, absolutely. And understanding that like saturation oftentimes is you know, if you're playing in the right sphere, there's no saturation, really. Like, because there's very few people that actually care. Like, you know, in a very, you know, frank manner, like there's very few people that actually genuinely care and want to be successful with this.
100%. I mean, the echo chamber effect is something that's like super prevalent in life generally, right? Especially with social media nowadays, Facebook, Instagram. Like, you follow the things that you like, as do the other people who follow these things. And these people sometimes just tend to be similar people in similar parts of life and similar paths, right? So you're gonna feel like everybody's on the same wavelength, everybody's pushing towards this thing, everybody's saying, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. But in the end of the day, it's also like we say, that a lot of people have the big dreams, the big aspirations, but they don't do shit about it, right? And it's easier to talk than it is to actually go and do.
Dude, a lot of the people that it's funny, right? Because it's not even the people that like stay quiet in the communities. A lot of the people that never ever get anywhere are the people that talk the most. Like, you'll see these people connecting with everyone on Facebook and, you know, being like the guy in the SMA space, yet they're spending all their time talking and networking, right? And they're using that as a substitute and as a excuse for not implementing, right? And so you look at these people a year later, and you know, maybe I don't know what they're doing. Maybe they're selling like a you know, cold email strategy, you know, like for, I don't know, $50. And that's really all they're doing. Like, you know, they haven't like committed to building their agency, so they've just stayed where they started. And it really is a shame, because there's something about letting the results do the talking, you know, and I feel like that's also very lost in this, you know, in these sub spaces in general.
I think that's a big lesson, not only for internet entrepreneurship, but entrepreneurship in general, right? Like, if you're looking to do something, if you're going for a project, when you speak about what you're going to do, instead of, and you know, you spend this time explaining to people your grand vision, your plans, where you're going to take it, all these things, you're releasing the dopamine and the serotonin in your brain, equivalent to you actually going out and doing it, right? Which makes the process of doing it even more laborious and more long-winded and you know, less effective. Yeah. And you know, that's something I fell for a lot at the start, and really just, you know, telling people all my plans and all these things. But now I've really realized that, like, in the end of the day, the actions always speak louder than the words. Right, so it's putting your head down and getting to work on exactly that will move the needle forward.
And a lot of people is not like the, you know, it's either they tell their network about it, or a lot of people have this obsession with being like, you know, starting their personal brand, right? They get into the e-com, you know, the e-com space or the agency space, and they're instead of being successful with their agency, which I'm sure they want to, right? They're already thinking about, you know, how they want to impact people and you know, mentor people. And it's just like, look, until you're successful with that vehicle, we don't want to see your videos. Like, it's harsh advice, but if you're not successful with your agency or your, like, don't put out any content, right? It's like, we won't be sitting there, you know, I wouldn't have created this podcast if I was just starting out, or I wouldn't have created one YouTube video if I wasn't getting success and having success with my agency. Like, this notion that you need to document the journey. If you want, like, record a video of your first day, right? And maybe your plans, just because it's going to be cool to see once you actually like manifest what you try to do, what you set out to achieve. But that's it. Like, focus on the work, right? And you realize that, look, if you want to create the videos, once you have the success, not only will you have that peace of mind that you've actually built something, but your videos are going to be much more impactful. Instead of like being so obsessed about, you know, creating content and spending so much time creating content, because creating content is a job, you know, like it's not an easy thing to do. So yeah, just wanted to like touch on that side of things as well, because nowadays I feel like it's as much as it's about talking to people, but also about like this obsession with creating content and documenting, which is just, in my opinion, it's just so wrong. Until you have success with the core vehicle that you're talking about or preaching about, shut up, put your head down, and get to work. Right? We don't want to hear it. Like your lessons are also not very impactful because you haven't actually done it yourself. Like it's so clear to see, man, that it's so clear to see when experience, the knowledge comes from consumption or from experience. Like knowledge that comes from experience, from someone actually trying these concepts, which maybe this person read somewhere or he was mentored, and he got these concepts, but then he implemented them, right? And executed on them. That type of knowledge is so much more powerful.
Because you see it for yourself, right?
Yeah.
And you
know the little subtleties. Like, oh, you're going to get this type of answer. Or like a lot of my mentees, sometimes they're like, how do you know, like, she was going to reply in this way? Because oftentimes they're like, oh, I have this goal and, she said this and I said this and, we decided on this. I'm like, dude, forget about it. Or like, she's not going to show up to the next goal or something like that, right? And they're like, how do you know that? It's because like the little subtleties, like, like how people are going to react to things because you've been in the trenches. And that is much more impactful in general.
100%. I mean, just to wrap up on that point as well, personal brands, right? You've just spoken about why you shouldn't be focusing on that until you actually have some success in what you're doing. But what do you think, like, what would you say is really the importance of having a presence and of being able to, produce content and show your knowledge in your field?
I think it's massive, right? And it's kind of a contradiction, because one of the things I'm big on is, especially for the e-com agency model, is like building this profile funnel, right? So basically you post content to cultivate those relationships, but see the difference, right? It's not like to impact people and have them start the same business model that you started, right? I'm not saying that, that's one of the things that I do nowadays, right? Because I've locked it in and I've been successful with the business model, right? Now creating content for the sole purpose of building that business is very different. And I think that's very powerful. Like creating content, being smart about it, right? So like maybe repurposing content so that you're not, every single day you're not like producing content and you're not running around like a headless chicken, but being smart about it and selectively picking out and writing content for LinkedIn or for LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and writing, having a newsletter. Like that is for the whole goal of attracting clients to your agency is very powerful, right? But it's very different to building a personal brand within around the business model that you are starting, right, or doing.
100%. I mean, I think that's some great tips on branding, and I mean on the struggles and the truth of internet entrepreneurship generally as well.
Dude, that was a really interesting combo. I think we took it to various ways that I think people will find a lot of value. I think this personal, this talk of like don't talk and do the work, and also with the personal brand angle, I think hopefully will help people, because it's gonna save you a lot of time. It's gonna save people a lot of time and a lot of like wasted energy on things that are not really gonna produce the outcome that they want in life.
Absolutely.
All right, guys, that is that for this episode of The Art of E-commerce. If you're listening and you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and smash the like button and hit the little subscribe and bell icon so you never miss another episode. Now, if you're listening audio only, go ahead and is it follow, subscribe, like whatever you got to do, right? Go ahead and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're listening. And as always, it's been a pleasure, and we'll see you in the next episode. Peace.